It was a quiet Tuesday evening when the phone rang. I was rinsing my dinner plate, the kitchen window reflecting the darkness outside. My name is Anita Lawson, 71 years old, retired school librarian, living alone in a small town in Vermont. I thought I knew what loneliness felt like, but that night I learned what fear truly was. The phone buzzed again. The number wasn't familiar. I almost ignored it, but something in instinct I can't explain made me answer. "Grandma," a small voice whispered. "I'm so hungry. He locked me in my room and Mom won't wake up." For a moment I couldn't breathe. "Ethan, sweetheart, where are you?" Before he could answer, I heard a car door slam in the background. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen in the kitchen, my hand trembling. The phone slipped against the counter, the dial tone echoing in the empty room. I pressed redial. It rang, then went to a robotic voicemail. I tried again, nothing. Ethan, my grandson. The child I hadn't seen in over 6 months, because my daughter-in-law Lauren had stopped taking my calls. She said she needed space after my son David's death, but I never believed that was the whole truth. I called Lauren's number. Straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Lauren, leave a message." Her voice was too bright, too practiced. I tried again, and again. 5 calls, no answer. My heart pounded in my chest. Something was wrong. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, my purse, my car keys. The house felt colder than usual as I stepped out into the night. The drive to their place took 45 minutes, but I barely remember the road. The headlights cut through the forest like narrow blades. My hands shook against the steering wheel. I kept hearing Ethan's voice in my head, hungry, scared, whispering. "Grandma, I'm so hungry." 6 years earlier, my son David had died on Route 9 when a truck ran a red light. He was 32. The officer who came to my door said he didn't suffer. My husband, Frank, held it together for the funeral, shook hands, thanked people. 3 weeks later, I found him in the garage, heart attack. The doctor said grief can do that, press down on the heart until it simply stops. Losing them both broke something in me. For a while, the only reason I got out of bed was Ethan. He'd sit at the kitchen table coloring while Lauren stared out the window. She used to smile back then, soft, tired but still alive. Then she met Derek Holt. He was polite at first, all yes ma man, no ma am, said he worked construction. Lauren lit up when he was around, and I wanted her to be happy. I really did. But soon the visits stopped. Every week became every other, then once a month, then never. I tried calling, writing letters, leaving gifts for Ethan, no reply. Until that night, when his small trembling voice reached across the silence. GPS said 10 minutes left. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached. The road narrowed, streetlights fading behind me. I prayed under my breath, the kind of prayer that isn't words but a desperate plea. Let him be alive. Let me not be too late. When I turned onto Pine Hollow Road, the world was pitch black. Only the sound of tires crunching gravel and my own heart pounding in my ears. I saw the house at the end of the lane, dark windows, no movement, a single porch light flickering. I parked by the curb, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment in the dark. The phone was still in my hand. I stared at it, hoping it might ring again. It didn't. So I opened the car door and stepped out into the cold. That was the night everything changed. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint had peeled from the siding, and weeds choked the flower beds I'd once helped Lauren plant. Every window was dark, except one faint yellow glow from what looked like the kitchen. I tried the front door, locked. "Lauren," I shouted, "it's Anita. Open the door." Nothing. I rang the bell twice, still nothing. My heart thudded hard enough that I could hear it. I circled around the side of the house, gravel crunching under my shoes. The kitchen window was slightly open, a gap big enough to see inside. Dirty dishes overflowed in the sink. A trash bag leaned against the counter, split open, flies buzzing above it. I banged on the glass. "Lauren, Ethan," silence. That was when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I picked up a heavy garden rock and threw it. The glass shattered with a sharp crack, scattering across the grass. My hand slipped through the jagged frame as I cleared a space big enough to climb in. One shard caught my palm, slicing deep, but I barely felt it. I hoisted myself through and landed hard on the linoleum. The smell hit me first, sour beer, garbage, and something rotting. I flipped on the light. The table was covered in takeout boxes and empty bottles. Cigarette ashes dusted the counter. My stomach turned. Lauren, I said again, quieter now. A sound came from the living room. I walked in and stopped. She was there, Lauren, lying on her side across the couch, one arm hanging off the edge, an open bottle on the floor. Her hair stuck to her face and her mouth hung slightly open. She looked pale, too still. I knelt beside her and touched her shoulder. Lauren, wake up. Nothing. I pressed my fingers to her neck, a faint pulse. She was breathing but deeply asleep, the smell of alcohol thick around her. I shook her once more, then froze when I heard a faint sound from upstairs, a whimper. Grandma? The voice was small, hoarse, like it hurt to speak. Ethan, I called, already running toward the stairs. My blood smeared the railing as I climbed. The hallway was dark, the air heavy. 3 doors, 2 open, 1 closed with a bolt on the outside. A bolt. My heart stopped. Hold on, sweetheart. I'm here. I struggled with the lock, my hands slick with blood. It slipped twice before the metal scraped free. I pushed the door open and the smell of stale air and something sour washed over me. Ethan sat on a thin mattress on the floor, his knees pulled to his chest. His pajamas hung off his body, like they belonged to someone else. He clutched a navy baseball cap to his chest, the one David used to wear. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Grandma, he whispered, you came. I dropped to my knees beside him and gathered him in my arms. He was so light it didn't seem possible. I could feel every rib beneath my hand. His hair was greasy, his skin pale. He trembled against me. I've got you, I said, holding him tight. You're safe now. I lifted him, his small arms wrapping around my neck. As I stepped into the hall, a loud bang echoed below. The front door slammed open. What the hell, a man's voice barked. Derek. I kept walking, one step at a time, Ethan's face buried in my shoulder. Derek's boots thudded against the floorboards. You broke my damn window, he shouted, staggering into view at the bottom of the stairs. His shirt was half-buttoned, eyes red, the smell of whiskey rolling off him. What are you doing in my house? I met his eyes, taking my grandson. The hell you are, he started up the stairs. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit 911. Stay back, I said. Ma'am, what's your emergency? Came the dispatcher's voice. My name is Anita Lawson, I said clearly. I'm at 412 Pine Hollow Road. My grandson has been locked in a room and starved. His mother is unconscious, and there's an intoxicated man threatening us. Derek froze halfway up the steps, his face drained of color. You can't. Yes, I can. Outside, I heard the distant wail of sirens growing louder. Within minutes, red and blue lights filled the windows. 2 officers entered through the broken kitchen window, guns low but ready. Derek stumbled back as they ordered him to the ground. Ethan clung to me tighter, his thin fingers gripping my coat. It's okay, I whispered into his hair. They're here now. And for the first time that night, I believed it. At the hospital, the bright white lights made everything feel too sharp, too real. I sat in a chair beside Ethan's bed while nurses moved quietly around us. He was hooked up to IV fluids, his small hand taped to the line. When the doctor came in, her expression was careful, professional, but her eyes betrayed the shock. Mrs. Lawson, she said softly, your grandson is severely underweight. He weighs 38 pounds. A healthy child his age should be around 55. He's dehydrated and showing signs of long-term malnutrition. I nodded, though my chest felt hollow. Will he be all right? With care and proper nutrition, yes. But this didn't happen overnight. We'll need to report it. Please do, I said. Report everything. When she left, I brushed Ethan's hair back from his forehead. He looked so small under those hospital blankets. His lips moved, barely a whisper. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, I said. You're safe now. You're not in trouble anymore. 2 officers came later to take my statement. They'd arrested Derek for child endangerment and public intoxication. Lauren had been admitted for alcohol poisoning, unconscious and barely breathing when they found her. I gave the officers every detail: the phone call, the drive, the lock on the outside of the door. My voice trembled only once when I said his name. After they left, I called a lawyer I knew from church, Patricia Moore. She was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, the kind of woman who got things done. I told her everything. By morning, she was at the hospital with a folder already half full of notes. We'll petition for emergency custody today, she said. CEPS will do their investigation, but you can't let that child go back there." "I won't," I said, and I meant it. Within 24 hours, everything started moving. CEPS took photos, interviewed nurses, documented Ethan's bruises, faint yellow ones on his arms, fresh purple along his back. They collected statements from neighbors. One, Mrs. Foster, said she'd seen Ethan climbing out a window 2 days before, that she'd given him a sandwich because he looked hungry. "He ran away before I could call anyone," she said, eyes filling with tears. Patricia subpoenaed Lauren's bank records. When she showed me the statements, my stomach turned. Every month, $1,250 from David's survivor benefits money meant for Ethan's care had been withdrawn in cash or spent at liquor stores, casinos, and bars. Not a single grocery store purchase in months. "They used his father's death to fund their addictions," Patricia said quietly. "This will help us in court." I stared at the papers, the lines of numbers blurring together. "I trusted her," I whispered. "After David died, I thought we were all each other had." Patricia placed a hand on mine. "You did what you could, now we fix it." The hearing was held a week later in a small family courtroom. Lauren was absent, still recovering in rehab. Derek sat beside a public defender, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. When the judge called my name, I stood, my palms damp, my voice shaking only on the first sentence. "My grandson has been neglected, starved, and locked away. I'm asking for temporary custody to keep him safe." Patricia presented everything: the medical records, police reports, bank statements, and Mrs. Foster's testimony. When she finished, the judge looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "Mrs. Lawson," she said, "are you prepared to assume full care of this child?" "Yes, Your Honor, whatever it takes." "Then custody is granted to Anita Lawson, pending a full review. Derek Holt is barred from any contact. The child's mother may petition for supervised visitation once she's in recovery." The gavel came down with a firm crack. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. Outside the courthouse, Patricia smiled. "That's step one," she said. "Now we start building the rest of the case." Ethan came home with me that evening. I'd made up the guest room with fresh sheets and the quilt my mother sewed 50 years ago. He climbed into bed without a word. His hair was clean, his small body finally warm. As I turned off the lamp, he whispered, "Are you going to stay here all night?" I sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. "Every night from now on." He nodded, eyes fluttering closed, and within minutes he was asleep. Downstairs, I stood in the kitchen where I'd first heard his call for help. The clock ticked softly. My hand still ached from the glass cut, wrapped now in clean gauze. I poured myself a cup of tea and watched the moonlight spill across the counter. I'd lost my son, my husband, and nearly my grandson, but not this time. This time I wasn't losing anyone. That night, for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. The weeks after the hearing passed in a blur of doctor visits, counseling sessions, and quiet breakfasts at the kitchen table. Ethan ate slowly at first, always glancing up as if afraid I might take the plate away. I never rushed him. I just kept the food coming: oatmeal, toast, scrambled eggs, things that smelled like home. By the third week, he was finishing every bite. At night, he sometimes woke screaming. I'd rush to his room and find him tangled in the sheets, tears streaking his face. "It's just me," I'd whisper, holding him until his shaking stopped. "You're safe now." The nightmares came less often as the months passed, but they never disappeared completely. By spring, he had gained 10 pounds. The doctor smiled when she saw the chart. "He's catching up," she said. "You're doing a wonderful job, Mrs. Lawson." I nodded, grateful, though deep down I knew healing wasn't only about food or medicine. Some wounds lived deeper. I didn't hear from Lauren for months. She'd been ordered into a rehabilitation program after her release from the hospital. The social worker said she'd checked in but wasn't participating. "First month is always the hardest," she told me. "Sometimes they have to hit bottom before they can climb out." Then, one rainy afternoon, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. When I answered, a frail voice said, "Mom, it's me." It took me a moment to recognize her. Lauren. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I need to see you." "You're not ready for that," I said. "You need to get better first." "I almost died," she said. "The doctor told me if I drink again, my liver won't make it. I'm in rehab now. I'm trying." I didn't know what to say. The anger was still there, buried beneath layers of exhaustion and sorrow. "Keep trying," I said finally. "When you finish the program, call me again." She cried softly on the other end. Thank you for not hanging up. After that, she started writing letters handwritten, shaky, covered in ink smudges. She wrote about the meetings, the group therapy, the cravings, and the shame. She wrote about missing Ethan, about hearing his laugh in her dreams. And every letter ended with the same line, I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm trying to earn it anyway. I didn't respond at first. I kept them in a drawer beside my bed, tied with a ribbon. But I read every word. One night in July, I found Ethan sitting on the porch steps, watching fireflies. Grandma, he said, do you think Mom's still sick? She's getting help, I said carefully. That means she's trying to get better. Will she come back? I looked up at the stars. Maybe someday, if she keeps trying. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't remember her smiling. I swallowed hard. Maybe one day you will. By the end of summer, a letter arrived from the rehab center's director. Lauren had completed the 90-day program and entered outpatient treatment. The social worker called to confirm she was sober, working part-time at a small grocery store, attending meetings 3 nights a week. I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in my hands for a long time. I thought about the woman I'd found on that couch months earlier, pale, lost, broken, and about the young widow who'd once sat across from me eating pancakes with her little boy. People could change, I told myself, but only if they truly wanted to. That night, I tucked Ethan into bed. He was reading a picture book about mountains, tracing the ridges with his finger. Can we go there someday? He asked. Maybe we will, I said, smoothing his hair. Maybe we both need new places to start over. When he fell asleep, I went to my room, opened the drawer, and untied the ribbon around those letters. I read them again, slower this time. And when I reached the last one, where she wrote, tell Ethan I love him, even if he never says it back, I closed my eyes and whispered to the empty room. Maybe it's time to let her try. The social worker arranged the first supervised visit in mid-September, almost a year after that terrible night. I told Ethan about it over breakfast. He pushed his cereal around the bowl for a long moment before asking, do I have to go? No, I said, but your mom wants to see you. She's been sober for almost a year now. You can decide when you're ready. He was quiet, thinking. Then, softly, can you come with me? Of course. The visitation center was a small brick building near the courthouse, painted with bright murals of animals and trees. Though nothing could really hide how heavy the place felt. The room we were given had a small table, 2 chairs, and a shelf of toys that looked untouched. The social worker, Ms. Carver, sat by the door with her clipboard. Lauren arrived 10 minutes early. I barely recognized her. Her hair was clean and tied back neatly, her face a little fuller, her eyes clear. She wore jeans and a cream-colored sweater, and when she saw Ethan, she covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes filling with tears. Hi, sweetheart, she said, voice shaking, you got so big. Ethan stayed close to me at first. Hi, he said quietly. Lauren sat down slowly. You don't have to come close. I just wanted to see you. That's all. Ms. Carver nodded, encouraging him. Ethan took a few steps forward and sat across from her. She smiled through her tears. You still like dinosaurs? She asked. You used to make them roar all over the kitchen. He nodded slightly. I like science now. That's wonderful, she said. You're so smart, just like your dad. At the mention of David, I saw Ethan's expression soften. For the rest of the hour, Lauren asked gentle questions, mostly about school, his friends, what he liked to eat. Ethan's answers were short but honest. When the clock struck the end of the hour, Ms. Carver stood. Time's up. Lauren's hands shook. Can I see you again? Ethan looked at me. I smiled. If you want to, I said. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay. On the drive home, he stared out the window, silent. Finally, he said, she seemed different. She is? I said. But you get to decide if that matters. After that, the visits continued once a month. Lauren never missed one. She brought small things, a book, a sketch pad, a pack of colored pencils. When Ethan mentioned his science project, she asked if she could see it next time. He said maybe. By the 6th visit, he laughed at something she said about a customer at her job. The sound was small but real, and I saw her cover her face like she was afraid to cry. A year later, the social worker called. Lauren's doing really well, Mrs. Lawson. I'd like to recommend increasing her visitation to twice a month. I agreed. When I told Ethan, he nodded slowly. I think that's okay. A few weeks later, I met Lauren for coffee. She sat across from me at a small table by the window. her hands wrapped around a steaming cup. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for saving him, for not giving up on me." "I did what needed to be done," I said. "You did the rest." "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" she asked. I took a deep breath. Maybe not all at once, but he's learning to trust you again, and that's a start. She smiled through tears. "That's more than I deserve." Ethan's 11th birthday came that summer. He wanted a small party, 6 friends, cake, music in the backyard. When I asked if he wanted to invite his mom, he hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I want her to come." Lauren arrived right on time, holding a box wrapped in blue paper. "Your dad had one just like this," she said as Ethan unwrapped it, a baseball glove, worn in just right. "Thought you might want your own." Ethan looked at it for a long moment, then whispered, "Thanks." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached her eyes. When the party ended, she helped clean up, talking easily with the other parents. As she left, Ethan walked her to her car. She leaned down and hugged him. This time he hugged her back. 3 years after that first desperate phone call, life had found its rhythm again. Lauren stayed sober, now promoted to assistant manager at the store. Ethan was thriving, healthy, growing, laughing. And me? I'd learned that love, no matter how bruised, could survive almost anything if you let it. That night, as we cleared the dinner table, Lauren said quietly, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I looked at her and smiled. That's what family does. We find our way back. Outside, the sunset spilled gold across the yard where Ethan's bike leaned against the porch. Inside, laughter floated up the stairs, steady and bright. For the first time in a long, long while, everything felt whole again. By the time Ethan turned 12, our home was once again filled with noise, the good kind. The kind that comes from laughter spilling out of the kitchen and sneakers squeaking on hardwood floors. He was taller now, his shoulders straighter, his eyes brighter. Some days when he smiled, I could see a flash of David in him, and it made my heart ache in the best way. Lauren kept her promise. She attended every meeting, every therapy session, and stayed sober through birthdays, holidays, and long weekends that might have tempted the old her. I didn't praise her too soon. Recovery, I'd learned, was fragile. But I watched, quietly, as she rebuilt her life piece by piece. She paid her debts, bought a second-hand car, and even started taking night classes in accounting. She wasn't chasing perfection anymore, she was choosing responsibility. The court eventually granted her limited, unsupervised visitation. At first, Ethan went for a few hours each Sunday. When he came home, I always asked how it went. "Good," he'd say. "We talked. She cooked spaghetti. It was weird but nice." Then one day, he added, "She asked me to help her build a birdhouse." He smiled, eyes lighting up. It actually turned out pretty good. I kept my feelings tucked inside, gratitude, fear, hope all tangled together. The kind of mix only a grandmother could understand. One evening in spring, Lauren came over for dinner. It had been exactly 3 years since I broke that kitchen window. She brought flowers, daisies, my favorite. We sat down, the 3 of us, around the same table where I'd once cried with worry. Now there was only the quiet comfort of forks against plates and the hum of a life pieced back together. After dinner, Ethan pulled out a school project, a family tree. He had drawn thick branches spreading from a single trunk, each name written neatly in blue ink. "This is you," he said, pointing at the roots. "And this is Dad." Then, above him, he had written Mom and me, their branches curling together. He looked up, uncertain. "Is that okay?" Lauren blinked back tears. "It's perfect." Later, as she helped me with dishes, she said softly, "You were right, Anita. Sometimes we have to lose everything before we can understand what matters." She hesitated. "Do you ever think David would forgive me?" I dried my hands and looked at her. "He loved you once because he saw something good in you. Maybe it's still there. I think he'd want you to keep finding it." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I'll keep trying. For Ethan. For me." That night, after she left, Ethan came downstairs with his blanket and sat beside me on the couch. "Grandma," he said quietly, "do you think Mom's happy now?" "I think she's learning to be." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "I didn't think people could change that much." "They can," I said, "if they really want to." He thought for a moment. "I'm glad you came for me that night." I wrapped my arm around him, feeling his heartbeat steady against my side. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." The years since had turned that one phone call into the dividing line of our lives before and after. Before, there had been pain, fear, and loss. After, there was healing, forgiveness, and something I didn't think I'd ever feel again: peace. I still kept that old phone, the one I'd given him, the one he'd used to call me that night. It sat in a drawer by my bed, charged but never used again. Sometimes, when the house was quiet, I'd take it out and run my fingers over the worn plastic, remembering the courage of a small boy who refused to give up hope. 3 generations of Lawson blood had survived heartbreak, addiction, and grief, but somehow we'd made it through. Not because we were perfect, but because we refused to stop trying. So this is what I've learned. Family isn't about who never fails you. It's about who shows up when everything falls apart. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened, but it gives you a chance to build something better from the wreckage. I don't know how many more years I'll get on this earth, but I know this much: Ethan will grow up knowing he is loved, and Lauren will never forget the second chance she fought for. And as for me, I'll go to sleep each night knowing I did what a grandmother must. That one call changed everything. It turned pain into purpose. It reminded me that love, even when tested, is still the strongest thing we have. So tell me, if this were your story, would you have answered the phone? Don't forget to like, share, and comment where you're watching from, because sometimes the stories that save us start with just one call.